On this show, two Taiwan hands first discuss the impact of Chinese tourism in Taiwan and why the Chinese tourists won't be missed. Next, what's truly alarming is the reality that unfolds, a nation ill-prepared and citizens lacking the unwavering commitment to defend their homeland. We delve into the profound implications of a possible victory by the pro-China KMT in the upcoming 2024 elections. Join us as we unravel the potential military conflict, a nation's unpreparedness, and the prospect of a pro-China future. An eye-opening discussion.
Hi, I'm Matthew.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today we have two fantastic guests. Both of them have been on the show before. So we have Matthew Fulco and Courtney Donovan Smith. So please say a few words about yourselves and then we will start with the show.
Thanks, Richard. It's great to be back. So I am now in the U.S. Working as a journalist and geopolitical analyst, specializing in cross-strait relations, elite Chinese politics. And I was in Taiwan from 2004 to 7, and then again from 14 until the end of 22. Now I'm back in the U.S., in the D.C. area, continuing to follow Taiwan very closely from here.
I'm Courtney Donovan Smith. I guess I also do geopolitical analysis. I'm also known for doing a lot of political analysis here within Taiwan on local politics. And I'm based in Taichung. I'm a columnist for Taiwan News, but I'm also on ICRT. I'm co-publisher of Compass Magazine. I organize music festivals. I wear a lot of hats, actually.
For people not in Taiwan, ICRT is...
It's a national radio station. It's the only one in English. It's I believe it actually has the largest listenership of any individual radio station.
Good. So last time we were here with Donovan and Michael Turton, I asked you before we finished about do you see people leaving Taiwan, arranging any plan Bs or anything like that? And you both said no. Actually, I think Michael said people are actually coming to Taiwan. It looks quite good. In the meantime, I've spoken to a lot of people, and I know there is some people who are preparing to leave, or maybe would it be Japan? Would it be maybe leave Taipei? So what do you guys think? How do you see it? Is there any panic? Or everybody's just chilling out?
Well, Matt wrote an article on this, so I think let's start with him.
Well, I mean, people often ask me, the running joke with my return to the U.S. is that because I was concerned about what was going to happen in Taiwan? And the answer is no, just back here to be closer to family. I actually feel that Taiwan's probably a little bit safer than it was not too long ago, thanks to an increased focus on national defense. I do think that businesses are more concerned about possible contingencies in the Taiwan Strait than they were a few years ago. And they are making plans, but that's just smart business. They have shareholders, they have they have a lot of interests at stake that they want to make sure they take care of. So having a business continuity plan is fine. It does not mean that you are going to exit Taiwan. I guess Warren Buffett's, much publicized decision to, sell off all of his shares in Berkshire Hathaway's shares in TSMC made some people think that he's concerned about what's going to happen in Taiwan, or that he has some kind of information about what may happen. But I don't think we should read into it that much.
Yeah, I'd agree with Matt there. I think Matt wrote a piece for Topics referring to some of AmCham. They did a survey where certain number of business members were considering alternative, backup plans and that sort of thing. But when it comes to your average person, I know of some people who are very concerned in the foreign community. We're thinking of leaving and all of this. And I know that there is an uptick in Taiwanese seeking out backup alternatives in places like Singapore. But the thing is that almost every case, it's an extreme backup. It's not like they're planning to make any move now, and it's not like they're panicking. It's just kind of a just in case insurance kind of a policy. It's not like people are panicking, going, "Oh my God, it's going to happen tomorrow. I have to leave now." And your average person here. I mean, the fact of the matter is that this threat has been ongoing for such a long time. It's kind of internalized, I think, within Taiwanese culture, and so I really don't, with amongst Taiwanese, your average person, I don't think is doing really much of anything or is worrying about it at all. The very wealthy, they have always created bolt holes for themselves and always will. This has been going back for as long, all the way back into the 50s. You had a lot of, for example, the children of KMT officials and a lot of the Chinese diaspora that came over after the Chinese Civil War. A lot of them relocated to the United States. So you get a lot of, what's called the Taiwanese American community in the United States and in Canada and other countries. A lot of them were actually Chinese diaspora that passed through Taiwan for a few years and then moved on. And there's, this dynamic is still going on. There's a lot of people here in Taiwan who want their children to have opportunities overseas. And it's only partly related to the cross-strait situation. People here tend to like to create opportunities and alternatives just in case. But again, it's not a panic or like everyone's going, oh my God, it's going to happen tomorrow. So, I don't really see a major uptick in anybody that I've been talking to or much in the statistics.
Good. Matthew, anything you would like to add?
I would just say that among Taiwanese, for all the years I lived there, one thing that I observed is that there's a certain segment of the population that just doesn't think that it's ever going to come down to that. I think they believe that when push comes to shove, there might be some kind of negotiation. And then there are others, and so they think there isn't really much that can be done. There are others who simply think China won't because of the deterrent that the US provides. So I'm not sure what percentage exactly that would be, but you could say that they're, in denial, but I'm not so sure. I think that there's some justification to think that, China will continue to exercise some prudence in terms of how it manages its relationship with Taiwan. So,
Yeah, I'm really surprised because no matter what happens, to what extent the PLA goes with their exercise, was it in August after Pelosi or now after Tsai meeting McCarthy, there is like everybody's chilling out. So this is the one spectrum. And the other one, I spoke recently to some people here, to foreigners who are one US military, another one scholar at Academia Sinica, and they said actually they are very close to those people who organize, those shooting courses at the shooting ranges, first aid. And those courses, you have to wait now 4 months in line if you want to sign up. It's really through the roof. Like people really sign up for those courses. So there are like two, I would say, spectrums. One is where people do absolutely nothing and just think the war would somehow happen outside of their life or maybe on the shore and they would go every day to work. And other people who really kind of try preparing. Maybe you would like to add something.
Well, I would just say that, in terms of managing national defense, Taiwan has not made that before the past couple of years. I just think that, especially during the era of Ma Ying-jeu from 2008 to 16, it was assumed that maybe this would just be put off indefinitely, that the two sides of the strait could avoid any kind of conflict. More recently, we see that conflict is a real possibility. So it's good to see people acknowledging that. That being said, I think that sometimes people outside of Taiwan underestimate the degree to which, Taiwanese will step up to defend themselves if push comes to shove. I think that's because Taiwanese people are not they're not like Americans, right? They don't they're not so vocal about it, and there isn't a gun culture and this idea of forming militias. It's very different than what we have in the U.S. That being said, if the Chinese troops land on Taiwan, that's already not a great situation. If you're involved in urban combat, and the PLA has landed, they have a beachhead. I mean, it's not looking good. So, uh, by all means, it's certainly worth cultivating certain skills to defend Taiwan, but the focus should still be on deterrence and failing that, preventing an amphibious landing and preventing a blockade from being successful.
Yeah, I agree with I agree with Matt. And I can add that the most famous example of sort of a self defense, a private self defense organization, is actually the Kuma Academy, and they don't actually teach shooting. What they teach is a lot of first aid, um, emergency response kind of stuff. So, and how to evacuate. And so they're concentrated largely on stuff that actually has dual purpose. For example, if there's a major earthquake or something like that. Um, and so, a lot of the civilian response, because there are such strict gun laws here, they're not really allowed to go too much into that. So it's not a hyper militaristic education that they're getting. I also agree with Matt that I think that people overseas may underestimate how much or how willing Taiwanese will be to step up and defend Taiwan. A lot of people forget that historically, Taiwanese actually did form militias right up through the late Qing Empire. When Taiwan was part of the Manchurian Qing Empire, the country was basically split up into militias and independent, indigenous groups. And it really wasn't until the Japanese came in with very mechanized warfare that they were able to bring all that under control. So, to suggest that Taiwanese are, some people I think tend to think because Taiwanese are polite, that means that they're meek. And that's really not the case at all.
Yeah,
So
that's
we
very
saw this.
common.
Maybe I would like to add. We saw what happened in Hong Kong, and I think here
Mhm.
people have much more to lose and are much more. It's really a way of life for a very few decades, kind of 2 or 3 generations. So I think they would. My opinion is they would actually fight way more
Well,
than the
it's
people in Hong Kong.
also it's something that I think is of course, Taiwan has become politically pluralistic, representative democracy, one of the freest in Asia since the late 1980s, and people value that. But they also value, the fact that Taiwan has good, strong private property protection. It's a solid, free market, a solid form of free market capitalism that Taiwan has. If China took over Taiwan, you would see, the kind of Chinese ownership of assets that you see in Hong Kong. And I think people in Taiwan intrinsically understand that. That was one of the reasons that the sunflower movement, I believe, gained some momentum. And Donovan could probably add some more detail to this, but there was, I believe, in that agreement that Ma Ying-jeou was pushing, a provision that would have allowed Chinese investors to invest pretty freely in Taiwanese real estate and maybe the financial services sector. And I think that set off some alarm bells for people because they were concerned about what that might mean for their property and for industry in Taiwan.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, the thing is, the Chinese capital can right now, under because there was 2 stages to ECFA. That was the free trade agreement under the Ma administration. The first phase passed, and that wasn't super unpopular. And they can, through vehicles, invest in local property and businesses in certain ways. Where the sunflower movement really burst out was over the services. It was the second phase, the services, and they successfully stopped that from happening. And what would have happened there is that you could have seen, you know uh, coming in from China, they could open barber shops and all kinds of
Right.
small businesses, and they could have come in and because of the way that there's kind of a predatory way that the Chinese Communist Party operates, they could have come in and undercut entire industries.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. So basically I'm supporting your point there. But yeah, the primary concern, I think, is for most Taiwanese was two things. I think the primary animating spirit of the Sunflower Movement was actually pro-Taiwan more than anti-China. It was more about protecting Taiwan and keeping Taiwan's sovereignty and also being proud of being Taiwanese, rather than it was directed at being anti-China. It was wary of China, I think would be a more accurate term. So the idea was to protect Taiwanese culture, protect Taiwanese, Taiwanese sovereignty, Taiwanese economic independence, so that Taiwan could develop as Taiwan and then not have it subverted by a hostile
Dear
power.
viewers, help us overcome algorithm suppression by liking, commenting, and sharing this important content. Especially since we talk to world's top experts.
It's well put. I think the point about the predatory nature of how the Chinese Communist Party operates in a business setting is fantastic. The Yitiaolong, is that what it's called, when they brought in all of their tourism operators into Taiwan?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
this happens in other countries too, not just Taiwan. They do this wherever they have the opportunity, and it doesn't generate a lot of revenue for local tourism. That's why this is something we covered at Topics extensively when Chinese tourism was a hot topic before Xi Jinping stopped them from visiting Taiwan. And of course, some hotels did, obviously, from that standpoint, the hotels could generate revenue, but a lot of the smaller businesses, the travel operators, Taiwan is well known for being reliant on SMEs. They were not profiting so much as they could have if China, did business in a different way. So I think that's become the sort of the Chinese market is important for Taiwan in certain respects, perhaps most due to electronics and the way certain supply chains are integrated. But when it comes to, Chinese coming to Taiwan to spend money, it's not necessarily what it may appear to be.
I can add a little bit of context there. I think you're speaking a little bit inside baseball there. Essentially, what Matt was saying is with the Yitiaolong is that what happened is that Chinese capital came in and invested in almost the entire chain. Because the expression that he used there is basically the entire dragon, which is kind of like from one end to the other. In other words, from the travel agency through a lot of the various steps, where they would steer the tourists, what companies they'd steer them to, what tourist traps they'd lead them to. Chinese capital was involved, or they got kickbacks at pretty much every stage of the way. So, I used to joke that pretty much outside of the lady selling the tea eggs at Sun Moon Lake, a lot of the Taiwanese just didn't get any business out of it. They got some jobs out of it, driving tourist buses and things like that. But the economic benefit for Taiwan, as Matt noted, was actually pretty marginal. A lot of the money went right back to China.
And it's even worse because they pushed out the Japanese tourists who didn't want to be together with, they didn't enjoy being together with Chinese tourists. So they kind of left the market.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, we all had an opportunity to see what the tourism market was like in Asia briefly. Before the end of zero COVID, there it was extraordinary. Not seeing Chinese tourists in some of these other countries, where they typically do go. But anyway, I think it is good though for China to for Chinese people to engage with Taiwan the way that they did when they visited. There was certainly my observation, because I did live in Shanghai for a while when cross-strait ties were better. there was a lot of positive commentary from better educated people in China about Taiwan, and about the system in Taiwan sometimes. So I think that that's probably something that the Communist Party was worried about, and might be one of the reasons why they don't want their students studying in Taiwan anymore. They don't want them to be influenced necessarily by Taiwan's free society.
There's something that's actually
Okay.
quite interesting, if I can add to this, sorry, is that there's actually two different types of tourists. The ones who come over as in tour groups, and the so-called FIT, free independent tourists. The FIT ones, I think, came away with a very positive impression of Taiwan and engaged with Taiwan because they were coming over as individuals with freedom of movement. Ian Rowan, an academic, did a very interesting study where he tracked tour groups. And these, the tour groups that came over from China, because their experience was steered, stage managed, not just economically, what we were talking about a minute ago, but also politically. And so they actually came away because he actually, conducted, he got their opinions, and statistically, he was finding that the ones who came over with the tour groups came away after the tour groups feeling that Taiwan was more a part of China, and that Taiwanese and Chinese were more similar, and that they were more convinced that Taiwan should be should be annexed by China than before the tour group. So there's two very different types of Chinese tourists that were coming over at the time. Now, there were a lot of the free independent tourists that came over, and I think they really got a positive experience, and I think that was very helpful for Taiwan. I also lived in China for a while, and I do think that there was a lot of very positive interactions. But the tour groups, I think, actually did more damage than good, not just economically, but politically.
It's also the fact that those are so cheap. I mean, it's set up in a way. I mean, it's set up in a way. It's very socialist. It's the idea everybody should be able to travel. They make it very cheap. They make money on the commissions from the various souvenirs that they sell along the way. But the type of person that's attracted to that, compared to free independent travelers who create their own itinerary for Taiwan, may have Taiwanese acquaintances or friends that they would visit. It really is a different type of tourist. So I agree with Donovan. The tour groups, I don't think Taiwan is going to miss them too much, even if they're allowed to return. But the FITs were good for cross-strait exchanges. I mean, that's the kind of people-to-people exchange that can build trust over time. The FITs.
Dear viewers, help us overcome algorithm suppression by liking, commenting, and sharing this important content, especially since we talk to world's top experts.